Just like any other Tuesday, I swung by the grocery store on my way home from work. The second I turned onto my block, I saw them. A handful of police cruisers were parked out front of my building, their light bars dark, but their presence screaming. I knew they were back for me. I took a deep breath, hoisted the bag of groceries, and walked into the lobby. The elevator chimed softly as it arrived at the 13th floor. The landing was crowded with cops. Across the hall, my neighbor's front door was wide open, revealing a swarm of forensics technicians moving with grim, methodical purpose. "Mr. Jensen, hold up a second. I need to ask you a few more questions about the case." I'd barely stepped out of the elevator before a detective flagged me down. I recognized him. Detective Miller, the lead investigator on the Sterling family massacre. I hung my grocery bag on my doorknob and forced a smile. "Of course, detective. Anything I can do to help. We have to catch the monster who did this. For my girlfriend. For Ashley's family." As I spoke, I felt a prickling sensation on my neck, like I was being watched by a predator. I scanned the crowd, and my eyes locked on a man standing in the Sterling's doorway. He was middle-aged, with a face like granite and eyes that missed nothing. In that single glance, I knew this cop was different. He wasn't just investigating. He was hunting. The way he looked at me was like an eagle zeroing in on its prey. His gaze was so intense it felt like he could see straight through my skull. Detective Miller flipped open his notepad. "What were you doing on the night of the murders? When did the security camera outside your door stop working? And why haven't you fixed it?" I let my brow furrow, my expression shifting from cooperative to angry. "Didn't we go over these exact same questions 3 days ago?" I snapped, my voice rising. "How are you ever going to find the killer if you're just wasting time with this bureaucratic nonsense?" Miller just chuckled, completely unfazed. "Easy there, kid. Just procedure. Work with me here, all right." I took another deep breath, reining in my manufactured temper. "It's not that I won't cooperate, detective. It's just doing the same thing over and over makes this whole thing feel hopeless." Miller was about to say something else, but the granite-faced cop walked over and put a hand on his shoulder. Miller nodded and stepped back. "Ryan Jensen?" the man asked. His voice was low and steady. I nodded. "Yeah." The man extended a hand. "Special Agent Drew Morgan, FBI. It's a pleasure." My face lit up, a picture of relief. I quickly wiped my hand on my jeans before shaking his. "Agent Morgan, wow. They brought in the feds. That's great. It feels like there's finally some hope for this case." Morgan's expression didn't change. He just gave a curt nod. His eyes flicked to the grocery bag hanging on my door. "Are you planning on inviting us in? Or do you prefer we talk out here in the hall?" I took the bag off the knob, my eyes meeting his. "To be honest, sir, I've already been down to the station 3 or 4 times since this happened. I feel like I've told the department everything I possibly could." "Don't worry. I don't like repeating myself," Morgan said, gesturing toward my door with a slight tilt of his head. "Please." Acts like he owns the place, I thought, but I keyed in my passcode and opened the door. True to form, Morgan walked in first, as if he were coming home. Miller followed, right behind him. My gaze swept over the floor, just inside the doorway, a seemingly casual glance. I put on a hospitable smile. "Excuse me for a second, gentlemen. Let me get you some water." "Thank you," Morgan said without a hint of warmth, already starting to wander through my apartment. Detective Miller, on the other hand, stuck to me like glue. A few minutes later, I set glasses of ice water on the coffee table. Miller sat next to me on the couch and started making small talk, acting like he was here for a friendly visit, not a murder investigation. After a while, Morgan returned from his tour. He stood over me for a moment, looking down, before taking a seat in the armchair opposite the couch. He picked up his glass and took a sip. "I hear you were an honors student in the chemistry department." Morgan's voice was calm, but it carried an unnerving authority. I nodded, trying for a light-hearted tone. "Yeah, a lot of good it did me. Tough field to find a job in. Kind of regret it now, to be honest." Morgan just grunted and pulled a file from his briefcase. "Do you know a Harrison Sterling?" Harrison Sterling. The man who lived across the hall. The man who, if things had gone differently, would have been my father-in-law. Of course I knew him. "Agent Morgan, what is this really about?" "When did you first meet Harrison Sterling?" he pressed. "When I first rented this apartment." Morgan didn't write anything down. "You were fresh out of college then, right?" I nodded. "For a recent graduate, why choose to rent in a place this expensive?" He had a point. The building was one of the priciest and most luxurious in Port Providence. The people who live here are wealthy, influential, I explained. It was a good way to network. Morgan gave no reaction to this. Harrison Sterling had his daughter late in life. By all accounts, he doted on her. Why would he let her date you? My eyes narrowed. Are you looking down on me, Agent Morgan? He shook his head slowly. Harrison Sterling, chairman of the Sterling conglomerate, wealthiest man in the city. You're a recent graduate with no family to speak of. I'm just finding it hard to understand why he would welcome you into his circle. Well, that was a hell of a way of saying he was looking down on me. 4. I shrugged. Maybe he saw my ambition. And did you love her? Morgan's eyes suddenly locked onto mine, sharp and piercing, as if trying to strip away my defenses and see into my soul. It was the first time since he'd arrived that he looked at me with such raw intensity. I rubbed my brow. Agent Morgan, these are some strange questions. Do they have anything to do with the case? Just answer the question. Yes. Of course, I loved her. Why else would we have been together? Morgan shot to his feet, pointing a finger at me. You're lying. I almost laughed. My patience with Agent Morgan was gone. From the moment he walked in, he'd acted like a psychopath. And I have a policy of not being polite to people I dislike. Is relationship counselor your side hustle, Agent? I asked, my voice dripping with sarcasm. He ignored the jibe. I checked your bedroom and your bathroom, he said, his voice cold. No recently used tissues, no damp spots on the pillows. You haven't shed a single tear for your dead girlfriend. And what's that supposed to prove? I shot back. Detective Miller, who had been watching from the sidelines, chimed in. It proves you weren't with his daughter for love, dude. Were you some kind of player? My question was, what does that prove? I said again, a faint smile playing on my lips as I held Morgan's gaze. Morgan stared at me, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. He slowly sat back down. It proves you had an ulterior motive for getting close to the Sterling family. I laughed, taking a slow sip of my water. Does it, though? This time, Miller and Morgan exchanged a look. From the start, Morgan's questions had seemed random, but I knew they were calculated jabs, meant to rattle my cage. I didn't know his ultimate goal. Responding this way was the only method I had to draw out his real purpose. If I let him continue controlling the conversation, the consequences could be disastrous. 5. After a long silence, Miller leaned back, crossing his legs. Let me ask you something, he said, his tone casual. Hypothetically, what do you think the killer's motive was for wiping out the entire Sterling family? I gave him a flat look. Sorry, I'm not a cop. That's a bit outside my pay grade. Morgan set his glass down. But you minored in psychology during college. Word is you were quite gifted at it, even if it's not on your official transcript. And there it was. They had dug into my life deep. They were here for one of two reasons. They suspected me, or they wanted my help. My tone remained unchanged. Bring the killer in front of me, and maybe I could tell you his motive. It sounded like a challenge, but it was really a probe, a way to get the answer I needed from their reaction. Miller chuckled. Don't you worry your highly educated head about that. If we find the guy, we can figure out the motive ourselves. A knot tightened in my stomach. I didn't need to probe any further. They suspected me. The room fell silent again. I raised my glass to take another drink. Just then, Miller abruptly stood up. My heart skipped a beat, but my expression remained placid as I took a slow sip. Miller stretched his arms, cracked his back, and then sat back down. Didn't startle you, did I? He asked with a grin. I just shot him a look and said nothing. Not bad, he said. Kid's got nerves of steel. He leaned forward again. By the way, do you know how the 7 members of your girlfriend's family died? I shook my head. That's part of your investigation. How would I know? I'll tell you. But keep it under your hat, okay? Miller leaned in close, whispering conspiratorially in my ear. 4 of them died from chemical poisoning. You might want to be careful. My eyes shot to Morgan. Are you suggesting someone is trying to frame me? I get it now. I have a lead, I said, my voice urgent. I had a rival for Ashley's affection. This other guy, Miller cut me off with a wave of his hand. We don't need to get into your romantic dramas, even if I am a sucker for gossip. But this could be a real lead. I insisted. What if he killed them to frame me? Suddenly, Morgan slammed his glass down on the table. Water sloshed over the rim. Then why didn't he kill you? He barked. With that, he stood up and walked toward the door. Miller drained his glass in one gulp. Thanks for the hospitality. We won't trouble you any further. Goodbye now." They were gone, but I felt anything but relief. Because I have a habit. It's a habit I developed after my apartment was burglarized once. Every time I leave, I make sure the windows are locked, and I sprinkle a paper-thin layer of flour on the floor just inside my front door. When I'd open the door for them, that layer of flour was gone. They suspected me, so of course they'd resort to some underhanded tactics. But I acted as if I knew nothing. Life went on. I cooked dinner, ate, read a book, scrolled through my phone, worked out, and went to sleep. For several days, this was my routine. Then, one morning, my boss called with an urgent assignment. He needed me in the office at the crack of dawn the next day. I was up at 5, but when I got to the lobby of my building, Detective Miller was waiting for me, looking like he'd been there for hours. I was already in a hurry, and my tone was sharp. "Detective, I have an important meeting today. Whatever you need, it'll have to wait." Miller fell in a step beside me. "Hey, I don't want to be here either, man, but I'm just following orders. Special Agent Morgan is the big shot from Washington. He's in charge. So, you're going to have to come with me." I stopped and faced him. "Why?" Miller gave a weak smile. "Don't look at me. He's the one who thinks you're the killer. The car's waiting. Let's go." I nodded slowly, a cynical sneer spreading across my face. "Right, of course. Let me guess, you have absolutely no other leads, do you?" "Not a damn one," Miller admitted. "And the higher-ups are breathing down our necks to close this case." An almost imperceptible smirk touched my lips. "So you need a scapegoat to make it all go away?" Miller flinched. "Whoa, kid, you can't just say things like that." I cut him off before he could continue. "I'm an orphan. No one to raise a fuss if I'm gone. I'm an honors chemistry student. I'm the perfect candidate, aren't I?" "Listen, that's not." I held up a hand to silence him and adjusted my tie. "What are you doing?" I didn't answer. Instead, I pulled a tiny button-sized object from my tie clip and aimed it at my face. "Remember this face. My name is Ryan Jensen. This account will not be deleted. If you don't see an update from me in a week, it means I've been silenced." Miller whistled. "Nice. A hidden body cam. Always prepared. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst." I took out my phone. "Aren't you going to stop me?" Miller just waved a dismissive hand. "Nah, the world isn't as dark as you think. Post away." I uploaded the video I just recorded, logged out of my social media, and then ejected the SIM card from my phone, snapping it in two. "All right, now I can go with you." "What about your job?" Miller asked. I scoffed. "After this is all over, I'll be sending you the bill for my lost wages." Miller clapped his hands together, a strange smile on his face. Even with my background in psychology, I couldn't decipher what that smile meant. We arrived at the precinct headquarters quickly. This time was different. I wasn't a cooperating witness anymore. I was escorted to a dedicated interrogation room, and my hands were cuffed to the table. They left me there for over 10 hours. They brought me food and water, but no one spoke to me. The chair was designed for maximum discomfort. You couldn't fully sit or stand. It was torture. After so many hours, my patience was frayed to a raw nerve. Finally, on the 12th hour, the door opened and Agent Morgan walked in. Alone. He sat down across from me and just stared, silent as a statue. He didn't ask a single question. As time ticked by, the agony in my limbs intensified. I'd lost count of how many times I'd protested. Suddenly, Morgan's voice cut through the silence. "What was your motive?" I shifted, trying to shake some feeling back into my numb legs. "For what? Wasting my time? Making me sit in this god-awful chair? That's not a crime, is it? I might be thinking about killing you right now, but I wouldn't actually do it." Morgan's brow furrowed. "Stop playing dumb. You know what I'm asking." I pushed up on my hands, trying to relieve the pressure on my spine. "Can I please just change positions? I'm in serious pain here. Just uncuff me. Let me stand up for a minute." Morgan was unmoved. He opened a file in front of him. "1 year ago, you graduated and moved to this city. You rented an apartment directly across the hall from Harrison Sterling. You befriended him, and within 6 months, you were dating his daughter. You then claimed your apartment was burglarized and used it as a pretext to install a security camera, a camera whose cloud storage only saves footage for 1 week. After the murders, your camera was conveniently broken. Harrison Sterling and his wife died of chemical poisoning. The pain was becoming all-consuming. I stretched my legs as best I could. Without thinking, I retorted, "So what? None of that is connected." Morgan looked at me with an expression of pure frustration. Ryan, you think you committed the perfect crime, but it's full of holes. You had enough money to rent that luxury apartment, but not enough to pay for a better cloud storage plan for your camera? Is it illegal to be on the free plan? I shot back. Oomph. Your goal was to record the family's keypad code, then reposition the camera. A week later, the footage would be automatically deleted, and your evidence would vanish with it. And you got close to the family for two reasons. First, to learn the blind spots in their home security system so you could plant the poison. Second, by establishing yourself as a loving boyfriend, you created a perfect alibi. No motive, no suspicion. As for the broken camera, well, that's self-explanatory, isn't it? Agent Morgan, you should write crime novels. You have a real talent for fiction. Are you going to confess? The discomfort was escalating into real pain, and my temper flared. Do I look like I have a death wish? I yelled. Do you really think I'm some kind of professional assassin? Morgan fell silent, studying me for a long time. No, he finally said. You're not an assassin, but your methods. I still haven't figured them out. Aside from the Sterlings, how did you kill the other 5? I was done. This guy was like a broken record, convinced I was the killer no matter what. But I was in his house, playing by his rules. I had to play along, or who knows what he'd do next. I changed my tone. Actually, I'm curious about that too. How'd the other 5 die? Morgan actually told me. Harrison Sterling's son, his daughter-in-law, and their 2 young children were all killed in their car. The couple prefer their privacy, so they had a house built up in the hills outside the city. When first responders arrived, the car had been blown apart. The medical examiner later found traces of the same chemical poison in both children. Our theory is that the parents discovered the kids had been poisoned. Knowing an ambulance would be too slow, they tried to drive to the hospital themselves. But their car had been rigged with an explosive device. He paused, glancing at me. How did you manage to poison them from so far away and plant a bomb in their car? I just rolled my eyes and gave him a slight nod, gesturing for him to continue. Your girlfriend, Ashley, was electrocuted in the shower. That one had nothing to do with poison. But all 7 deaths occurred within half an hour of each other, in locations miles apart. So that was it. The old couple across the hall, poisoned. Their son's family, killed in an explosion. And my girlfriend, electrocuted. 3 different locations, all within a 30-minute window. I thought for a moment, then offered my analysis. This sounds like the work of a team. Why are you so focused on me? Hearing this, Morgan's eyes went wide. Ryan, you just dug your own grave. I never said this wasn't a team effort. I met his gaze without flinching, my voice soft. You didn't have to say it. Your entire line of questioning has been about me, and me alone. If you suspected a conspiracy, you would have asked about accomplices. I leaned forward slightly. All right, the test is over. I can help you solve this case. Morgan slapped the file on the table. Solve what case? Right now, you're the prime suspect. Don't be ridiculous. I'm a college grad with no connection to these people. No grudge. Why would I kill them? Isn't it obvious you brought me in because of my background in psychology? You want my help. Everyone in my unit has studied psychology, Jensen. What makes you so special? My mistake. Guess I was being narcissistic. Stop trying to change the subject, and stop answering questions with questions. I have all the time in the world. He was right. I had to face this head on. I composed myself. Let's back up. Why do you seriously think I would kill them? Morgan leaned back. For their money? I laughed, shaking my head. If I wanted their money, why wouldn't I have waited until after we were married? Then why were you with her if you didn't love her? You said it yourself. You did a thorough background check. You know I'm trying to build a life for myself. For someone with no connections, what's a faster way to the top than that? Morgan took a deep breath, stroking his chin. That's just it. Your story is too neat. Everything is logical. Everything makes sense. And when everything is that perfect, it means something is fundamentally wrong. This was a meticulously planned operation. Someone with more experience had to have guided you. A fresh college graduate couldn't have pulled this off so flawlessly on his own. Morgan stared at me, and I stared back. Ryan, do you believe in the perfect crime? I shook my head. Probably not. There's no such thing as a clean getaway, just a temporary one. Then how much longer are you going to run? Ugh, for God's sake. I exploded again, my voice echoing in the small room. What do you people want from me? You're going to convict me based on nothing but your own wild speculation. Morgan closed his eyes. When he opened them again, a long moment later, his expression had changed. My intuition screamed that we were finally getting to the heart of the matter. Before you were in the foster care system, who were you? He knew I was an orphan, that I grew up in group homes. I was too young. I don't remember. Morgan shook his head. Most people start forming memories around 5 or 6. The fact that you claim not to remember means you had a deep connection to the Sterling family before the age of 6. He spoke as he thought, piecing it together. That must be your motive. My God, that's terrifying. Were you planning this since you were a child? Agent Morgan, I said, interrupting his musings. What is it? I froze, and the air in the room grew heavy. A slow, wide smile spread across my face. The smile seemed to change the very atmosphere of the room, turning it tense and charged, like the oppressive calm before a hurricane. My own placid demeanor was now chillingly out of place. Agent Morgan, I said, enunciating each word. Are we an impasse? Do you need a hint? Morgan's eyes widened, as if he were looking at something truly horrifying. I propped my chin on my hand and leaned back against the uncomfortable chair. The hint is on its way. Oh, and so are the reporters. In that instant, the power dynamic in the room flipped completely. A moment ago, I was the lamb being led to slaughter. Now, I was the one in control. Bang! The interrogation room door flew open. Morgan flinched. A panicked Detective Miller rushed to his side and whispered something in his ear. Morgan's unflappable expression slowly morphed into one of utter disbelief. He stared at me, his pupils dilating. If you did this, he roared, this changes everything. I said nothing, but I let him see it in my eyes. If I didn't do this, was I getting out of here anyway? It was the first time I let my true expression show. I knew he could read it. Morgan was silent for a moment, then let out a long sigh. He turned to Miller. I want you to pull everything you can find on the Sterling conglomerate's dealings with Police Commissioner Thompson, going back 17 years. I want every single detail. I'm 23. 17 years ago, I was 6. Miller glanced at me, then nodded and hurried out of the room. I hope, for everyone's sake, that we get to the bottom of this before things escalate, Morgan said, as much to himself as to me. I asked quietly, are you trying to use this case to get a promotion? No, I'm trying to use this case to challenge myself. Ha 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 ha. I laughed for a long time. Agent Morgan, what is justice? Without a moment's hesitation, he replied, punishing evil and protecting the good. That's justice. I nodded but said nothing. Morgan's gaze turned uncertain, as if he was wrestling with a deep internal conflict. Then he added, but punishing evil doesn't mean you can use illegal methods. I shook my head slowly. Does that make it any less just? Morgan closed his eyes, leaning back in his chair. He was waiting, and so was I. About half an hour later, another officer entered and whispered in Morgan's ear. Morgan looked at me, then said to the officer, let them in. But sir, this is an active investigation. Do you want the narrative to be that we framed a scapegoat? Morgan shot back. Because if that happens, no one will believe us, even when we have solid proof. The officer nodded reluctantly. A moment later, a group of 7 people entered the room, armed with cameras and microphones. Leading them was a tall, striking woman. I knew her. Chloe, my late girlfriend's best friend. Good evening, she said, speaking directly to a camera. This is Chloe Vance, reporting live. We're here at the Port Providence Police Department, where authorities have agreed to an exclusive interview regarding the Sterling family murder case. I slumped in my chair, the picture of exhaustion. Chloe, you finally came. They were about to pin it all on me. Chloe looked at me with a pained expression. I saw the video you posted and got the crew together as fast as I could. I'm sorry we didn't get here sooner. She turned her attention to Morgan. Agent, I trust that the department is committed to finding the real killer of my best friend's family, not just closing the case with a convenient scapegoat. Correct? Morgan nodded. Chloe pressed on. Then why are you holding an innocent man? Morgan glanced at me, my eyes half closed and distant. He's not so innocent. We now have information that suggests he's the primary suspect in the murder of Police Commissioner Thompson. The room erupted in gasps. The 7 reporters stared in shock. They had come for a murder case. Now, it was turning into a national security incident. What? Commissioner Thompson has been murdered? When? Just now, Morgan said grimly. Chloe shook her head. Agent, that makes no sense. Ryan has been in here with you this whole time. How could he possibly be the killer? Young lady, Morgan said coolly. As a reporter, you of all people should know not to be deceived by appearances. Chloe opened her mouth to argue, but I spoke first. Agent Morgan, you say I'm a suspect. What is this information you have? Morgan held up his phone and played a video. We pulled the security footage from Commissioner Thompson's residence. It shows Ryan Jensen visiting his home 1 month ago. The commissioner's cause of death was also exposure to a chemical agent. I let out a cold laugh. That's a pretty weak link, Agent. Was I the only person to visit his house in the last month? No, but you were the only visitor who is an expert in chemistry. So, because I know chemistry, I must be a murderer. Then what was your purpose for visiting Commissioner Thompson? I gave a faint smile. My apartment was burglarized. I reported it, but the investigation went nowhere. My future father-in-law, Mr. Sterling, knew the commissioner, so I paid him a visit to see if he could help move things along. Morgan rubbed his temples. So you deliberately got close to Harrison Sterling, dated his daughter, faked a burglary, installed a camera, and used that as an excuse to get inside the commissioner's house. It's all one seamless chain of events. Agent, I don't know what you're talking about. If you don't have any actual evidence that I'm a killer, you should know that you only have 3 hours left before you have to release me. Morgan's face darkened. I had no idea how many people were watching a live stream or what Detective Miller had managed to find. All I could do was wait. Tick, tock, time crawled by. Agent Morgan, it's been 24 hours. Can I go now? Morgan looked utterly drained. He gave a weary nod. A few officers came in to uncuff me. As I stood up, Morgan's voice, thick with fatigue, followed me. You can go, but you won't get away. A small smile played on my lips. Agent Morgan, can I have a word with you in private? I took a few steps toward him, but was immediately blocked by the officers. Morgan waved them off. I leaned in close to his ear, my voice a whisper only he could hear. You're never going to find any evidence, Agent. Your mission here wasn't to catch me. There's a job that only you can do. I could feel him tense up. Take my advice, I continued. Change your perspective, and this whole thing might just solve itself. Detective Miller is waiting for your help. He's working on something that only a man with your authority can handle. Someone who isn't afraid of whose toes he steps on. Morgan leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, and closed his eyes. As I left the room, I passed Detective Miller coming back, his face a mask of frustration. We didn't speak, just walked past each other, two ships in the night. Back in my apartment, I collapsed into bed and fell into a deep sleep. I dreamed of my little sister, Amy, tugging on my sleeve, begging me not to go to school. In the dream, I was loved, cherished. It was warm and sweet. This must be what it feels like to have a family, something most people are born with and never have to chase. But it was just a dream. When I woke up, it was gone. I stood in front of the mirror and wiped away the 2 wet tracks on my cheeks, traces of a weakness that didn't belong to me. It's time to end this. 3 months passed. In that time, I lost my job. My landlord evicted me. I was living on the streets. When Detective Miller found me again, I was a different person. Filthy, bearded, indistinguishable from any other homeless man. He got straight to the point. Morgan reopened the cold case. My shoulders started to tremble. The wave of emotion was so strong it stole my ability to speak. I slapped myself hard across the face twice, forcing the words out. Let's go. Get Chloe. The interrogation room. 3 months later, and I was back. But this time there were no cuffs. Agent Morgan was already sitting in his usual spot. I met his gaze from across the room and took the seat opposite him without a word. We sat in silence until Chloe and her news crew arrived. Then Morgan began. 17 years ago, the Sterling conglomerate was tasked with a redevelopment project in a rural area of the county called Blackwood Creek. At the time, property records were a mess. Families without official deeds had their homes classified as illegal structures, which were demolished without any compensation. He glanced at me, but my long, greasy hair obscured most of my face. It was an ugly situation, he continued. There were frequent clashes, violent protests. The project stalled. Then, one night, one family's house collapsed. There were no survivors. I spoke 4 words, my voice a gravelly rasp. An example for the others. Morgan ignored me. After that, The demolition work proceeded smoothly. "There's more," I said. The voice didn't sound like my own. Morgan took a deep breath. The official report stated that the house collapse was accidental, a structural failure. I let out a bitter laugh. "Since you reopened the case, Agent, why don't you tell them the truth?" Morgan set the file down. "Over the past 3 months, I've conducted a new investigation. I interviewed former residents of Blackwood Creek. I found inconsistencies. Following the trail, I discovered that the collapse was not an accident. It was deliberate. Everyone in the room was hanging on his every word. Harrison Sterling, chairman of the Sterling conglomerate, personally led the demolition crew that night. The subsequent investigation was altered, the facts buried. The man who did it was Commissioner Thompson. At the time, he wasn't the commissioner. He was promoted not long after." I lowered my head. "There's more." "More?" Morgan asked, his expression hardening. I looked up at him. "What about the coroner's report on the bodies?" Forensic technology was limited back then. The report was inconclusive. "Agent, it would take heavy machinery to knock down a house. It would make a tremendous amount of noise. Was the family deaf?" Morgan's jaw tightened. "You seem to know a lot about this." "Of course I do." A muscle twitched in his cheek. "The family had 4 members. Only 3 bodies were recovered. The 4th was never found. It's possible that person never died at all. And since you seem to know so much, it's safe to assume that missing person was you, isn't it?" I pushed my hair back from my face, my eyes burning into his. "So you were bluffing?" "It doesn't matter. Do you have proof?" Chloe suddenly gasped, a look of dawning horror on her face. She turned to the camera. "Ladies and gentlemen, do you understand what's happening? Let me break it down for you." The story begins 17 years ago. Morgan and I listened as Chloe, sharp as ever, laid out the entire conspiracy for her audience. I couldn't see the comments on the live stream, but I could feel a silent wave of support building behind me. Morgan sighed. "Do we still need proof?" "I'm not that missing person," I stated, my voice firm and clear. Everyone in the room, including Morgan, froze. I continued, "So now, you have to prove that I am that missing child to establish a motive. And after that, you still have to prove I committed all 7 murders." My words hung in the air, plunging the room into a deep, contemplative silence. Morgan stood up. "This is as far as I can take it. You're right. I don't have the evidence. I can't convict you. You're free to go." He paused. "But don't forget, when dealing with a terrorist, sometimes evidence isn't a requirement." Commissioner Thompson's death had changed the nature of the game. "Now that your work is done," I said, "you can go back to Washington." "Ah!" Morgan laughed, a long, hollow sound. He walked over to me and leaned in, his voice low. "You can manipulate me. You can use me. But don't for a second think you can command me. You're a master puppeteer, Ryan. I still don't know what Miller sees in you, why he'd hand you the evidence against yourself and let you orchestrate this whole spectacle. I am staying. I want to see how you two clean up this mess." Morgan turned and walked out. "Don't go yet," I called out to Chloe and her crew. Before she could ask why, Detective Miller walked in. "Ryan Jensen," he said, his voice official and loud. "I need you to make a full confession. I have obtained evidence of your crimes." Miller placed a clear evidence bag on the table. Inside was an empty pill bottle, a photograph, and a series of bank statements showing cash withdrawals. It was time to end the charade. I sagged in my chair, as if the last ounce of my strength had just evaporated. After a long silence, I spoke. "I'll talk, but I have my dignity. Let's do this somewhere else." Miller's face hardened. "Just confess. With the evidence I have now, I can secure a death sentence." I didn't yield. "If you do that, this case will never be perfect. You'll never know how I did it." Miller's brow furrowed. He motioned to his officers, who led me out into the hallway. "I need some fresh air. It's my last request." "Take him to the window," Miller ordered. Standing by the open window, I greedily breathed in the cool night air. "I told you I have my dignity. I want to do this in the light, on camera, for everyone to see." "What are you planning?" Miller asked. "Open the window. There are a dozen of you. I'm not going to get away." At Miller's command, an officer opened the large window all the way. I sat on the floor and began my story. "You're probably wondering how I created a deadly chemical agent without leaving a trace. It's because I synthesized it in my college lab years ago. I've been sharpening this knife for 17 years. From the moment I escaped that hell, I took on a new identity in another city. The suffering I endured, it's meaningless now. When I returned to this city, I knew the time to use that knife was coming. The fact that the apartment across the hall from Harrison Sterling was for rent, that was my chance. If dating his daughter was me drawing the blade, then the moment I faked the burglary was when I started to swing. Installing a security camera after a break-in is perfectly reasonable. I was close with the family, so no one questioned my motives. I used the camera to get their keypad code, then changed the angle. After a week, the footage was gone, and so was the evidence. The burglary also gave me a perfect excuse to get into Commissioner Thompson's home. Through an introduction from Harrison Sterling, he wouldn't be suspicious of the gift I brought him, a rare bottle of scotch, because I came recommended by his partner in crime. He was a man of expensive taste, so he would set aside a gift from a nobody like me. I timed it perfectly. The moment he got home from work was the moment the slow-release agent inside the cork would reach critical mass. Colorless, odorless, death in the air. Oh, and that gift was my masterpiece. A special resin I designed. It not only preserved the toxin, but also completely disintegrated after activation, leaving no trace. My thoughts were becoming jumbled. At this point, just getting the story out was a struggle. I knew their passwords, the blind spots in their security. Poisoning the old couple was simple. I also learned the routines of their son and his wife. I knew my girlfriend Ashley's habits. The security cameras in their gated community only kept footage for a month. A month before the murders, I placed a chemically activated timed explosive in their car. I made it myself. The materials required cash purchases, hence the steady stream of withdrawals. The son and his wife were creatures of habit. Every day, they gave their 2 children a vitamin D gummy. I created 2 identical gummies, laced with a fast-acting poison, and swapped them into the bottle. They were visually indistinguishable. A month later, on that specific night, the children took my creations. The couple lived on a remote mountain. When they saw what was happening to their kids, they panicked and rushed to the car. The timing was perfect. Boom. How did Ashley die? Chloe asked, her eyes red with tears. 21 Ashley. My girlfriend. Harrison Sterling's daughter. We were always careful not to get caught by her father, so I would sneak in her house. No one ever knew I was there. That made it easy. I tampered with the wiring in her shower. I knew her schedule. That night, I sent her a text, suggesting she take a relaxing bath. 7 people dead in 3 locations within 30 minutes. No one would suspect a single perpetrator. That was the key to deflecting all suspicion from myself. Chloe's eyes were blazing. She lunged at me, screaming, but the police quickly restrained her. Chloe, I said softly, this is the last time I'll ever use you. While the officers were holding her back, I lunged forward and threw myself out the window. It was a 13-story drop. Splat. The moment the body hit the pavement, it erupted in a violent chemical fire, consuming the corpse in seconds. What the hell? He must have coated himself with some kind of substance beforehand. Why would he do that? Maybe it was his way of atoning. To leave nothing behind. 22 The 12th floor of the precinct building was a storage area, rarely visited. Late that night, 2 figures moved furtively through the shadows. Sorry, kid. A John Doe from the morgue was the best I could do. I know the body type wasn't a perfect match. You're sure there are no cameras covering the alley? Positive. Who points a security camera at a police station? All right, it's time for a new face. Here's your ticket to Thailand. What's the plan when you get back? If you'll have me, I'd like to work with you. Punish some evil, protect some good. 17 years ago, I was coming home late from a friend's house. My parents and my little sister, Amy, had already eaten dinner. I'd eaten to my friends. As always, we had our nightly race to see who could fall asleep first. This time I lost. For some reason, my parents and Amy were out like a light. Bored, I eventually drifted off too. But in that hazy state between sleep and waking, I sensed 2 figures standing by my bed. I didn't dare open my eyes or make a sound. Cold sweat soaked my pajamas. The boss was right. A little something in their food did the trick. Crash. The sudden noise made me jump. I clutched my blanket, praying for it to shield me. They're not even stirring. That stuff is potent. Let's get to work. Crunch. Crack. Dad. Mom. Amy, wake up. There are bad men here. I was terrified. I couldn't move my parents. I grabbed Amy and pulled her under the bed with me. Ruhr. Amy. No, 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 Amy. I watched, helpless, as a falling ceiling beam crushed my little sister, burying her. It missed me by an inch. The image of her tugging on my sleeve, begging me to play instead of going to school, flashed in my mind. The memory of my parents' love. It was all I had left. When I woke up again, a man in a police uniform was sitting beside me. He handed me a piece of bread. "Mister, did you save me?" My voice was small and innocent as I wolfed down the bread. "You survived that, son. You've got a long life ahead of you." I started to sob. I already understood. The world had left me behind. My parents and my sister are gone. Bad men killed them. "Can you help me, mister?" The officer looked startled, then stared at me with a profound intensity. "Kid, when bad men have the power to turn lies into truth, the world stops being fair." In that moment, though I was only 6, I understood. "Can't you take me with you, mister?" "I can, kid. I'm not well. The doctors say I don't have much time. I can't take you in. But don't you worry. I'll tell you how to get your revenge. First, I'm going to help you get out of this city. Then, he told me many things. I don't remember them all. He didn't mind. My dad told me never to take things from strangers. Why are you helping me?" The officer walked to the window, his voice distant. "My name is Miller. When you come back, find a police officer who shares my last name. Once you're sure it's him, you can tell him your plan. And in return, you have to help him. Help a good man with no connections rise through the ranks." He snuck me onto a train. Before I left, Officer Miller gave me a book. He told me to read it until I knew it by heart.